The Elder Scrolls 6 is years away. No matter how much we'd all love it to happen, Bethesda's long-anticipated follow-up to 2011's Skyrim isn't dropping anytime soon, with the studio/publisher instead prioritizing Starfield, which isn't going to release for at least another year, one would imagine. Even so, that hasn't stopped Scrolls fans from agonizing over everything that could potentially be included in the series' next entry. They've had almost 7 years now to consider what a Skyrim sequel could look like, and with the hype surrounding next-gen consoles getting more and more palpable by the day, it seems as though speculation regarding a 6th Elder Scrolls has reached a fever pitch. Rumours and purported leaks have been swirling for some time now, with most signs pointing towards Elder Scrolls 6 being set in Hammerfell and High Rock, home to the Redguard and the Bredons. It's all a little too exciting, so I'm Ewan, this is WhatCulture Gaming, and here's 10 ways Bethesda can make Elder Scrolls 6 the perfect sequel. Number 10. Don't introduce a voiced protagonist. I honestly can't think of anything more antithetical to a role-playing game than a voiced protagonist. Bethesda introduced that feature in Fallout 4, but all it did was rob the player of their agency, funneling them into a predetermined narrative and making all the wonderful distractions and side quests of the open world feel more than just a little out of place. The whole point of an RPG is to let the player live out a fantasy, to imbue their chosen character with a voice of their own and a journey they can craft along the way. Sure, Skyrim had the main Dragonborn arc, but as soon as players escaped Helgen Keep, they were free to do whatever they pleased. They could travel to the College of Winterhold to become a mage, or head southeast to Riften and make their fortune with the Thieves Guild. There wasn't really a narrative constraint on what they could or couldn't do. A voiced protagonist undermines all of that, even if the game affords players a multitude of options to mess around with. This is why the next Elder Scrolls title absolutely must not introduce one. It's easy to consider it an innovative step on the surface, but scratch a little deeper and you'll realize it undermines the foundations of what makes these RPGs so compelling. Number 9. Make combat feel less floaty. Skyrim might have set a benchmark for fantasy RPGs, but one area it could have definitely improved in was combat. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with the combat in Skyrim. Players are given access to a veritable smorgasbord of different weapons, including swords, axes, bows, and even magic, if they so desire. It's not short of satisfying moments either, with cinematic cameras accentuating long-range bow kills, or even a well-placed axe blow to the neck. The problem more so lies in the fact that everything feels really floaty. Enemies don't really stagger or react organically to swords or arrows, and on next gen, that just isn't going to cut it. The worst thing that combat can do is take the player out of the moment. A sword should feel like a sword, and if you're targeting a specific limb with a weapon, it should make contact the way you would expect, even if that does result in some pretty gnarly animations. Number 8. Introduce naval gameplay. A rumoured feature of the next Elder Scrolls title, if the 6th game is set in between Hammerfell and High Rock, it stands to reason that players will have to navigate by sea to cross both kingdoms. Both are actually connected by a land border next to the west of Skyrim, but that would necessitate players taking a long trek to pass between them. Give them a boat, however, and they'd be able to make the trip in no time at all. This can't be a simple case of fast travel either. Players need to have the option of owning their own ship, almost like the Assassin's Creed games, and be able to dock and more in a variety of different places. It makes double sense too, given Hammerfell is a kingdom populated by the seafaring Redguards. Number 7. What's going on with the ALDMERI Dominion? After thwarting the efforts of Mythic Dawn and Oblivion, a game that was set only a couple or so years after the events of Morrowind, players were thrust 200 years into the future with Skyrim, and much had changed. We learned that not long before the events of Skyrim that both the ALDMERI Dominion and the Tamrielic Empire had fought a great war, and that the latter had suffered a defeat and was forced to sign the White Gold Concordat, which prevented the complete destruction of Tamriel. The Thalmor, the elven supremacist government that controls the ALDMERI Dominion, are rarely placed front and centre in Skyrim, but are clearly destined to assume a much bigger role as antagonists in the future. The Imperials fight the Stormcloaks in Skyrim largely under the proviso that the Empire needs to unite Tamriel for a future conflict with the Dominion, which both factions seem to agree is on the horizon. It's possible that the next Elder Scrolls game could delve into such a conflict, as Hammerfell actually occupies a special place in the ongoing battle against the Thalmor. We learn in Skyrim that Hammerfell was able to resist an ALDMERI invasion and rejected the White Gold Concordat, placing them firmly in the sights of these evil elven aggressors. Number 6. More factions. By the time Skyrim was finished, it had a ton of factions to join up with. Basically, if you had an angle in mind for your character in Skyrim, then there was an organisation to join up with, and the same rule should apply for the follow-up. There are all sorts of roles and groups that didn't make the cut in Skyrim that would be great for the next title. Maybe players could join the Alakir, Hammerfell's mercenaries who we last saw in Whiterun extraditing Sadia back to their homeland, or link up with a band of pirates sailing the high seas. Number 5. Try and cut down on the jank. Expecting Bethesda to cut down on the bugs and glitches in their games is, well, it's just not going to happen, is it? So long as the studio utilize the creation engine for their titles, fans can expect all sorts of weird bugs and glitches to come up at some point or another. One could argue that's all part of the charm, but tell that to the folks tearing their hair out trying to play Fallout 76. It just doesn't slide these days. Patience has been wearing thin for Bethesda's hijinks for the past few years now, and you can only hope the studio have taken that on board for the next Elder Scrolls game. Number 4. Introduce some optional survival aspects. Depending on how invested you get into the Elder Scrolls series, adding a survival element could either be the best thing ever or an utterly pointless distraction. But here's the thing, Skyrim already had the elements to make a great survival system if it actually wanted to. Some of the game's most successful mods have actually built off Bethesda's foundations and made it so that players need to stay warm, eat, and sleep in order to continue progress, in a similar fashion to the mechanics that made Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption 2 such an immersive success. For starters, one thing that would be really great would be to make cooking a worthwhile skill. You can create all sorts in Skyrim, but food only ever acts as a substitute for health potions, hence the mad panic you get when you're fighting a giant and have to scoff 40 wheels of cheese just to stay alive. Encumbrance, while an oft-hated mechanic in these titles, could actually work very well with a solid inventory management system in mind. Ensure chests work and that players can store valuables on their horse, and you add something to the experience by forcing people to think about what they're carrying with them, as opposed to, yet again, shedding 40 cheese wheels to cram in one more batch of dragon bones for the road. Number 3. Greater character customization. Skyrim already boasts one of the best character customizers in the business, so how do you actually improve on it? Well, there are more than a couple of options. While the 5th Elder Scrolls game did allow players to mix and match armors to create their own look, it could have been a lot better. Full armor sets repeat themselves constantly throughout the game, and while you do have the opportunity to smith your own weapons and kit, there isn't any major visual difference between armor you've created and the stuff you can find littered across the map. The next Elder Scrolls should try and make repeat clothing a thing of the past. Let players better layer their clothes so they can really place ownership on their character, and add further customization to weapons like unique engravings, bows, arrows, and quivers. There are all sorts of ways to really up the customization for Elder Scrolls 6, whether through better distinguishing different combat styles, player clothing, or even home ownership. Number 2. Have the world genuinely change based on the player's decisions. This one's really for the role-playing purists out there, but still, Bethesda can do a much better job of making their worlds evolve over the course of a player's journey in-game, whether that be Elder Scrolls or Fallout. In Skyrim, you could join multiple factions, and none of them would really complain if you held membership for one that effectively contradicts their main goals. That means you could actually be the leader of the Thieves Guild or the Dark Brotherhood, and still team up with the Companions or the College of Winterhold, which doesn't really make sense in the grand scheme of things. The next Elder Scrolls needs to evolve in tandem with the player's journey. Not that Skyrim didn't in places, but the next title needs to better realise that feature next time around. And number 1, let players visit each other's worlds, but still focus on single player. Okay, so this is probably an extremely spicy take to have post Elder Scrolls Online and Fallout 76, but hear me out anyway. The Elder Scrolls title should always have a focus on single player. The role-playing aspect is what makes these games so absorbing and why Fallout 76 sticks out like a sore thumb compared to the other entries in Bethesda's 2 RPG franchises. Their world should feel lived in, and everything should really be tailor-made for single-player gaming. That said, can anyone honestly say there wasn't a time where they wish they could have shared their Skyrim journey with another player? Demand for mods like Skyrim Together, a creation that integrates a multiplayer component into the 2011 release, illustrates that players are curious, and in the spirit of Animal Crossing, Minecraft, or even more fittingly, Dungeons and Dragons, it would be great to share the next Elder Scrolls game with a friend, or two. push the boat out. Again though, it shouldn't be the focus. The Elder Scrolls series should continue to place single player at the center of its attention. Equally though, there's a reason why D&D is on the rise yet again. Capitalizing on that trend in the next game would be so great to see, even if it was just a neat little side dish to the main course we're all eagerly waiting to chow down on. And yeah, that was my list looking at some of the things I think would make Elder Scrolls 6 the perfect sequel to Skyrim. Let me know what you want to see in Bethesda's follow-up down in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, as it really does help us out. You can catch more lists and articles like this at whatculture.com/gaming, and more of me on Twitter at @YouandRuinsThings. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.